Sabingelela koko, bingelela koko, mhlabiyangelingana, bingelela koko, bingelela koko, mhlabiyangelingana, bingelela koko, sabingelela koko, bingelela koko.
My full name is Vus Ngxande. I am a creative. I do things. I'm a graphic designer, I'm a writer, I'm a photographer, a filmmaker, amongst other things.
What got you into like the creative arts?
I studied graphic design and the course included photography, which I was terrible at. It was horrible. I think I failed most of the time. I failed most of my photography projects. But it's weird. I still carried it. As difficult as it was, I still liked it. But it didn't like me very much. So it took years before I kind of got the hang of photography. I suppose when you're creative, then you are it's easy to sort of shift between disciplines, as it were. You end up having lots of interests, and if you give yourself time, you can develop the interest also into something that is a solid presence in your daily life. It's in the sense that it's not necessarily a hobby, but it's an actual part of your work. You end up finding your thing, and when you find your thing, then you realize that you don't have to do it like everyone else is doing. Then you find your own way of doing it. And once you do that, the difficulties that you face then are different. It's challenging, but it's not impossible. Yeah. Because when you're doing things just like everyone else, you look at other people like, so-and-so has, that kind of camera, that kind of lens, that kind of equipment, and then they're doing these kind of shots. But if you stick to your thing, you realize I actually don't need that. I don't need that setup. I don't need that setup because I'm trying to capture a particular thing. I think the subject matter is the thing that kept me in photography. With my photography, I started leaning a lot towards documentary photography. I couldn't get people to pose. There's something very unnatural for me to make people pose. Like, stand this way, stand that way. I couldn't. So a lot of the time when I would do shoots, I would be like, just do what you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I prefer following. I prefer to follow you as you sort of experiencing yourself in that moment than to tell you what you should be experiencing. And because of that outlook, I tended to sort of shoot more and more normal life. I started with family and friends, and I was always taking pictures, even when we were just hanging out. What also became interesting for me, I started liking keeping quiet. I liked keeping quiet and experiencing things.
Like being in the background, being as invisible as possible.
Yeah. I've learned, and with documentary photography, that was the thing that was most useful for me, in that to be able to be in a situation but just disappear at the same time. That took longer to be good at, to understand the concept of being there without being there. And over time then I started learning that the work comes before you take out your camera. You see, like 80% of my photography work happens before I take out the camera. By the time the camera comes out, I've already disappeared. And by disappearing, it's not to say that people don't see you, but people are so comfortable with you being around that they don't notice you, which then became very helpful when I started doing photography of Bungoma, in that it became very crucial to not be there, because your presence shouldn't be a part of the situation. The only way you can do that is for people to be comfortable with you. This is such a sacred thing, a moment that is happening, for people to trust you in that moment. And a lot of the time, these are total strangers, right? And you're coming into a very vulnerable and sensitive moment within their life. That was also a learning curve. But it didn't happen overnight. I had to learn the hard way, things like what to take pictures of, what not to take, I remember one time I got chased down the street.
No.
Yeah. Like I had to run, like they were running behind me because I took pictures of a certain ritual. And at the time I didn't even know what the ritual was. I was just there and I was taking the picture. And then I left and then I turned and then people were like,
Oh my God.
You know, and they want to take the camera. And then I realized that I had to learn what just happened.
Yeah.
What is that was happening?
Yeah.
And then I realized that I actually had to study
this
thing first. I had to attend without taking my camera and understand, okay, this is why this is happening. This is why this is happening. This is public viewing. This is sacred. And this is secret, because there's the sacred and there's the secret. We can witness sacred things in a public space, and you can sort of retain its sacredness, but you can't witness secret things and then put it out. So then with that, I had to start learning how to see with spirit, if that makes any sense. I had to learn to shoot according to how I felt, not what I saw. Because if I shot what I saw, my pictures would look the same. Because what you would see is just abantu begida, for example.
Yeah.
But if you shoot according to how you feel, you see other things that, you know, are not part of the spectacle. You see small things. You see an eye, you see a hand. You can see. I remember the one time I took I took a picture of her back. You don't see her. It was a picture from the back. And after, when I was going through the pictures, editing them, I was like, I don't remember taking this picture, but I remember what I felt in that moment, because it was their graduation and she had like a particularly difficult time during, you know, those final stages. And in that moment, she was so intensely in sync. You could like feel her vibrating, you know, like you could just feel her radiating all this energy. And when I looked at the picture, I'm like, I can see that, you know, I can sense that it's just a picture of someone's back, but for some reason
it's about you capture like an energy.
Precisely.
So it's no longer just taking pictures of things and what's actually happening, but you're capturing the spirit and the energy of the moment. And that's so different to any other kind of photography, because there's spirit moving in the place, and you kind of also in the moment kind of feel overcome by the spirit of what's happening. So it also then translates in whatever you're capturing.
When people then engage with the pictures, you know, someone would say like, yo, I saw this picture and, you know, I felt this kind of thing. Like, yeah, I know, because for it to do that, it means that it was meant for you. And that was the other thing that I took time to learn, that my work is not my work, that there are people that things are meant for. There are people that are meant to receive certain things at certain times. You might not see it, you know, but some people at certain points need to hear certain things. They need to hear certain words. They need to see certain things. They need to hear certain sounds. They need to, because everything builds up, you know, whatever has been happening in their life has been building up, and what you're bringing adds just another layer and just another layer. So that when I was learning that, I realized that it's not about beautiful pictures. You know what I mean? Because if you're going for beautiful pictures, you're going to take things that are very typical, and you're not going to be in the moment. But like I said, the work comes way before the camera comes out. I spent a long time with people. I spend a long time talking, engaging. Sometimes I spend a lot of time working, helping with the wood, you're helping with the car, you're helping with this. Like 70% of the time I'm working. My camera is here, but I'm working. And I'm talking to people. And sometimes when you talk to people, then you start to understand the context. You start to understand their story. And when you understand what a person is about, when you take a picture, you can contextualize the picture. If I've had a personal conversation with you before my camera got out, you're not going to feel awkward when you see the camera. If people feel it, you've ruined it. Because at the same time, I had to understand that you're speaking of idlos, you know. What you're seeing is another entity altogether. in those moments, especially during ceremonies. What you're seeing is an entity, and that entity might not appreciate you doing what you're doing in that time. And that's another thing I learned the hard way, because I nearly caught the beat down, because the very first time I attended Intwaso, a ceremony of that kind, I took out my phone. It was my very first time, but I didn't know what trance was.
Yeah.
I didn't know that people were in trance. I thought they were just people, or they were just, I don't know, high or something.
Performing.
Or they were just performing. I had no idea how Dlozi functioned. And it just happened to be Omninkulu who had a whip. Right? So he was coming out of like a garage and he's walking down the driveway. And I knelt and I came right in front of him, and I was kneeling and I was taking a picture. And I just saw that whip, felt it like just flying past me like this. I got up and I stood back. And then someone explained to me, like, no, dude, that's not because I'm like, but I was speaking to that guy just now. Why is he? It's like, no, that's not him.
Not the same guy. That's
not the same person. And this was what, 2013.
Yeah.
So then it started building. Then from there, each experience, built on another one. The more I did that kind of work, the less I could do any other kind of work in terms of photography. I couldn't do shoots. I couldn't do, paid things. I just could not bring myself to do it anymore. To the extent that my camera only comes out for that. It's the only thing that I do. And I've sort of come to accept that in terms of that skill, that's what I've been given that skill for.
Yeah.
When I understood that, then the work started directing itself.
Yeah.
Then I didn't have to ask people to come to because I would ask people like, yo, can I come to a ceremony? Can I do that? Now it will happen. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I am sent to specific people.
Yeah, working alongside you at the African New Year ceremony in Morebeng. I remember seeing you in the beginning, and then there would just be moments where you just were not there.
Yeah.
But if I intentionally look for you, I'd spot you. But that thing that you were saying of just like disappearing into the background or trying to be as invisible as possible, so you can capture the moments without feeling like you're being an interruption of.
Yes. And to speak about that specifically for me is that one of the most important things I had to learn is the connectedness of things.
Yeah.
In that this work I don't do in isolation.
Yeah.
Right? It does not happen in isolation on its own there. Like, I don't go in and take pictures. I am very aware that every time I go somewhere to do this work, it's going to tie into something else in my personal life, even if it's years down the line. You understand? Like that particular trip, there was an incident that happened where one of my friends who was there, Ukoko, went into a singing trance. I didn't think that was possible. I didn't think that was actually real. Or rather, it happened, not it's real. But before that, I had been doing research for something. And I had learned about how certain cultures, especially amongst the Shona, they can evoke trance using imbira.
Right. Yeah.
But I didn't imagine that it was possible, because I'm used to Igbo, It has to be loud, it has to be this, and the imbira is such a gentle sound, right? And so there was a guy there, Aza, who's a musician, and he started playing the imbira, and then and we were just chilling, right? And the song that came out, I ended up recording it. I was just generally recording. I always have my recorder on, and I recorded it. But I knew that it's not something I would ever share, because I don't share. I have issues with how we share certain things, especially like when it comes to ceremonies and Rukita. Like, for example, I don't like showing people's faces. If you'd notice, a lot of the time you won't see people's faces in my photos, especially my bikita. If they're sitting, it's fine. But I don't like taking like facial pictures. I don't like sharing that particular moment. From showing the whole person. You'd always see from the back their face or their feet or their hands or this, but it's never like and you'll never see the eyes. Because I think that is a very sacred area, space when that is happening. So the particular song that Koko sang had a particular message, right? And then when was it up? Because when they went last year, right? It was last year.
2019. Yeah, it was last year.
It was last year, September.
Yeah.
So earlier this year, I was doing my podcasts. The particular topic I was dealing with was how Black women had to hide their callings and go to the church, and how we thought they ran away to the church, right? And then when I was doing my research, I went with my mother to church to see, because I wanted to see what Abu Mambo Mtandazo do. What is it what are you getting from this? That you ran away from your calling and now you hate it, or you don't do those things because we are sonta and all of those things. So I attended one particular memorial service for one of my mother's friends. So I was in a church full of Abu Mambo. I was like one of 2 or 3 guys there. And as the ceremony was carrying on, some women would fall into trance. But this is church, and they're wearing their full church outfits. And I'm like, no, man. And it kept happening. And then, they would carry them out. I'm like, I know this trance, though. And this is not just any trance. This is like the kind of trance where someone who was never taught how to be in sync. But now the problem is that these are old women. These are not young girls like it normally happens. These are old women. And in that moment, it actually dawned on me that the church didn't cure it.
Yeah.
These women just figured out how to hide it. They managed to figure out how to control it amongst themselves. So this is like their little secret that they don't want people to know, that Abu Mama Mtandazo are actually very familiar with spirits.
Yeah.
They know it very, very well. To the extent that they know how to get a person out of trance in the church. They know what to do. They know the remedies. They know the processes. They know that all of those things. They know how to get a person out of trance in church. And when I had to then record that episode, the song that I had heard back then was the answer to the question I was asking in that particular episode of the podcast. Right? The thing that I've been trying to figure out this whole time was captured in that song that I had heard when I was there. And it made sense for me because it answered a question for me, particularly in my family. You understand? So I went there with the aim of documenting something, an event or whatever. But what actually came back with me is something that made sense much later.
Personal healing.
Personal healing. And with each and every time I have gone to document, it has had an impact on something else in my life at a later stage. You understand?
Yeah.
And that's when then you realize that I'm not doing this work. This work is doing itself.
Yeah. You're just a vessel.
You know what I mean? Or this work is doing me. And it's also partly a confirmation like, okay, you should be doing this. And when you're at the right place, you will know.
Yeah.
Because I've been in the wrong places as well. When I had forced myself, because out of curiosity or out of a desire just to have a vibe.
Yeah.
Then you find yourself in the wrong places where sometimes I would get sick. I would come back from doing the work, and then I'll get home and I'll be sick for days, you know, but not like physical sickness. I'm like, you're sick spiritually, like you're not okay, you know. And then they'll be like, you weren't supposed to go there, and we told you not to go there, and we showed you not to go there, but you insisted. So yeah.
That's so crazy. Listening to you, I feel like so many of my own experiences are echoed in a lot of the things that you're saying. Like I can relate on like such a deep level. I think more than anybody I've ever interviewed, honestly, because I understand, you know, you enter these spaces, you're not as a journalist. A lot of people maybe mistake you for a journalist. They don't really know why you're there, and then you have to kind of find your footing within the space, and you want to be as respectful as possible. I've had people that have had to pasha. You know, when you ask permission, can I shoot this? They're like, okay, let me go pasha first and ask abadala to see if they're okay with it, because you're actually not even documenting people, you're documenting spiritual occurrences and spiritual events. You mentioned your podcast. What got you into doing that?
How the Journey Kwantu came about, in the traveling that I've been doing, I had been experiencing a lot of different things, but I still had questions. The questions that I had weren't necessarily about spirituality as such. I wanted to understand, how do I know all of this is real? What makes me believe that this is what is real for me? I have questions, and my questions lie outside the boundaries of Ubungo. And a lot of the time, we are afraid of asking questions, especially when it comes to spirituality. We are afraid to ask questions that you feel like will take you off the path, you know. And reflecting back in my time when I was still Christian, it was also that you know, there were questions that you couldn't ask, because if you question it, you're a non-believer, or you're this, you're that. Then I was like, I'm actually giving myself permission to ask questions. I'm going to ask questions. I want to understand everything. The Journey Kwantu was supposed to be a book. It started off with me researching for a book. Right? It started about 2 years ago. I would read a lot. I spent a lot of time reading and researching a lot of different topics, and then I would, you know, write it down and whatever. But I was like, I think this process of me learning is a thing on its own, you know, because I think that there are other people who have the same questions, but when they come online, they feel intimidated because the people talking sound like they already know. You know, not that what they're saying is wrong or whatever, but people feel like, hey, this person is an expert, and I'm not. And when they speak above my head, and they speak like it's common sense, but this is not common sense to me. A lot of comments I get about my podcast is that it's very immersive, because it's not just, I don't just sit and tell you. Kind of take you through. You feel like you go, you know, to different places, because I had to learn how to do that, how to immerse, how to use sound engineering to create an atmosphere of, I'm not just talking to you. You feel like we're in the car, then we're in this place, and then we're in that place.
That's
and
so cool.
I'm taking you to church now, and then, you know, I were a place you were in one episode, we're sitting under a night sky, we're sitting by the fire, you're listening to the elders talking about what the calling is in Xhosa. And you can hear the fire there, you can hear the crickets, you can hear the people sitting around, you know what I mean? To create that. And for me, that's a creative expression as well. Like, how do you then use your gift to not just deliver something, but deliver it in a very, very meaningful way? So the podcast then, it started off with me wanting to understand how is it that most of us as Black South Africans, we start off our spirituality as Christians, right? Most of us don't just arrive. For a lot of us, things that have to do with African spirituality come much later. Like, for as it comes in your adult life, you know, you have spent the majority of your life as Christian. So I wanted to understand, how did that happen? Why was I Christian? Why was I born Christian? So then I went and I interviewed my mother. I'm like, asked her, why am I Christian? And her basic answer was like, I don't know. You're Christian because I was Christian. And I was Christian because I was told that I am. And then to understand that, then I had to understand my grandmother. And to understand her, I had to understand her grandmother. And then I sort of got to find the root of it. Like, oh, okay, this is actually where all of this thing started. Because I thought that my topics would have to do with us now. But ironically, the majority of the episodes are back in like the early 1900s, the 1800s, because that's where a lot of the things that we're experiencing now began. Yeah. I did an episode where I investigated why is it that we use brandy to pass. How did that come about? And that wasn't what I sought out to find. This was something I found as I was sort of doing research, because I was trying to figure out how is it that black men sort of gave into alcohol, and how this process, how we as black men, we are spiritually poor. Right? Black men struggle with spirituality. We don't know what to do with it. We can't center ourselves in it. And in trying to figure that out, I had to find out about how alcohol actually came into black society in the first place. Yeah. And because people would be like, no, it was the apartheid government, it brought in alcohol to kill the black people. And it's actually find out that it's not. That's not what had happened. What happened was black women started selling to make a living. And then from that, the Shebeen Queens were born. They then introduced spirits into cultural settings. It came as a result of black women trying to survive. Right? They had to do this. And what happened was the apartheid government then realized just how much money they were making. That black women were making so much money, and the government was feeling threatened by the empowerment that they were getting from it, right? And they knew that an empowered black woman is a bit of a problem. So then what they did was that they went into competition with the black women, and then they created the beer halls, and they tried to create as many of them as possible. To get that money that the black women were making. So the rhetoric is that the beer halls were introduced to destroy black men. No. They were introduced to try to compete with black women to get the profits that they were making. And in doing that, then the what can I say? Because originally beer was Nkomoti, right? It was all natural and whatever. But then in the competition, the chemical content had to change, because Nkomoti takes a long time to make. Something quicker needed to be done. You know what I mean? And then the potency of the alcohol changed. And when the potency of the alcohol changed, its function within spirituality changed. Right? And when that frequency changed, black society changed direction.
Whoa.
Right? When the chemical content of the alcohol changed, black society took a different direction and started separating from spirituality. Utshwala, as a function of spirituality, lost its context. The idea was to get a black man drunk, but at the same time, the black women needed a way to make a living. Black women were not allowed to work. It was illegal for black women to work, right? So what could they do? The only thing, from a lot of them, the only thing they could do was to sell alcohol. And when the beer halls were going up, and then the beer halls had a quicker turnover, the black women had to find a way to make a quicker turnover. So they also had to change the chemical content of the alcohol. And then that chemical content then started having an impact on the psyche of black people.
You're always being taught a specific lesson. I always thought that, isangoma, linedlozi, and that's exclusively the structure of it. Like, we as people outside don't really have idlozi, and then we learn that, okay, actually we do, but I thought maybe they're not as active, or we're just all different or whatever. But it actually is that we all have we have active ancestors that are taking us on the path that we're actually here to walk. Your work is as valuable as the work of a healer in the traditional sense, because you are a healer. You're just doing it in the way that you're called here to do it, and it's different.
I've sat for a long time trying to figure out what is this thing that I'm doing, right? Because people ask me a lot, like, I don't know. It's not something that's on my mind. You know what I mean? It's not. But what I can tell you for a fact is that the work is happening.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I'm being sent to do things. I can tell you that the work that I create helps people. And it's not waiting for me to pass a certain stage.
Yeah.
The work that I need to do it now.
Yeah.
Without a title. Without training. I remember when I started doing the photography work and realizing that it has that spiritual element to it. Then I'm like, I need a mentor. I need to speak to someone who can show me, because that's what people do. Like, that's how we approach healers. And like, I had this dream. Can you help me with this? We have that mentality. Like, once you pick up on something like that, you automatically have to run to someone.
Yeah.
And then you go consult and whatever. Whereas, Kokwami, she didn't understand. Like, what photography? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Why would you be sent to do that?
Yeah.
So it got to a point where I just had to keep doing it and listening to the moment, because I feel I connect when I'm working.
Yeah.
I sat with it and asked myself, what is it, this thing, this creative ability? Where does it fit in? Because it seemed like to be a healer, you have to, you can interpret dreams, you can use imagery. When someone comes, you feel something, and then you can tell them this. And I don't have any of those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't have, but I can create things. I can create things that move people. I can create work that connects with people. That I can do, and I can do it not consciously, but it's something that I know for a fact happens. You know what I mean? This skill is not a modern skill. The camera is just the modern interpretation of a very ancient thing, right? The skill that this creative skill has been around for millennia.
Yeah. In
each generation, it manifested something else. Right now, it's camera work and books and podcasts and this. 1,000 years from now, it's going to manifest. The very, very same thing is going to manifest as something else. Yeah. And then they will be like, no, in modern times, the idea of modernity sometimes derails us a bit.
Yeah.
What is it that you're actually doing? What is the core of the work? What is the camera that does? What is the core of it? It's documenting. It is preserving.
Yeah.
Right? It is preserving identity.
Yeah.
Preserving identity. People have been doing it for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And people are going to keep doing it for thousands of years. Right? Right now, this is just what we use now. These are our tools. Back then, they would sculpt. They would write. Some people would create songs. Some people would, you know what I mean? There would be a lot of different things that other people would do that is the same thing as I'm doing. How we lost ourselves as Black people, as Africans, came about precisely in how the documenting was done. When the documenting was disturbed and shifted, that's where the damage was. That's where our relevance is. How do we take this thing now and propel it into the future? 100 years from now, that's always my thing, 100 years from now, how will this work be still alive? When you think of that, you have to think of technology. You have to think in the future. You can't think of this is how things were done in the past. I get that. Okay, I get that. But how is it going to function into the future? Because you are supposed to carry it and improve it. We are fixated on repeating it. If you look at drums, for example, if we look at traditional drums, the design of traditional drums has gone like that. Okay, it has gone like that. If you look at, for example, Japanese traditional culture, with their minimalism and precise designs and the clean designs, at some point it was crude. It wasn't as nice looking.
Yeah.
But they kept at it. Over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, they kept improving. We stopped improving. Okay, and I get it. I get colonization came, apartheid came, but we stopped improving nonetheless. And now, as this generation, with all of this access and all of this technology, we can't not improve. That is our thing. When we talk about modern things, let's talk about modern things not now but in the future. You know what I mean? How will this episode be accessible 50 years from now? when this knowledge is needed. YouTube will be down. I don't know. Facebook will be gone. You know what I mean? We don't know what is going to be around. So then the question is that how then do we build permanent structures of knowledge? And I don't mean, the one thing I hate about when you talk about spirituality, like we want to talk about these big massive things, like, you know, as a community we must. I don't do community things. I can't. I get it. I appreciate the people who can. You know, I appreciate people who can mobilize and say, but this constant waiting for this big thing to happen is a thing that's costing us.
Yeah.
This thing like, no, we need to unite. No. I know the biggest work that I need to do in this lifetime, I can do on my own. Okay. I don't need a group of people. I don't need a team. I don't need 100 people to do. No. I've realized that if I really, really, really pay attention, I can get the work done on my own.
Yeah.
Once in a while, you do come across people. We do this, you know, paths cross.
Yeah.
Right. We link. We do that work that we need to do. We part ways. You know, this constant need for belonging to a larger group, I think, costs us. And the main reason why I also did my podcast was that I wanted to go at it alone.
Yeah.
How do you explore spirituality out of the need to belong?
Yeah.
You know, if you're not thinking of I need, you know, a Kobela, I need that kind of person, I need that kind of person, then you realize that you actually learn from a lot of different people.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you learn a lot of different things from a lot of different people. And the one thing I've sort of taught myself is not to close myself off and say. That's why when people ask me, like, what do you do? It's a very difficult thing. I can tell you what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Right? I can tell you what I'm doing, but I know for a fact that this time next year I'll be doing something else.
Yeah.
That would need another title.
Yeah.
And then we get caught up in title like, I'm at this, I'm at that. I just do things. Increasingly, my work has become more and more around spirituality. And it was not an intention, like, I want to do spiritual. No, I'm a creative, I want to express myself. But the gift that I was given says, express yourself for a purpose.
Yeah.
When you get online and read about spirituality, it is so desperate and so scary.
Yeah.
You know, it is like, oh, I had this dream, and
Yeah.
what does it mean? And
I'm afraid.
and patting your twasa, and they're saying this and they're saying that. For me to do the podcast, I basically took all that I knew about it. I'm not anything. I'm not into African spirituality. I'm not into anything. If I keep identifying with that, there are things that I feel like I can't ask. If you can't step out of it and look at things objectively, you won't get the answers that you want. So I had to then abandon my attachment to African spirituality.
Yeah.
Right? And set it aside and say, I don't care what it is, I'm going to question it. Okay, I want to understand. And I want to understand it. Because I told myself, if I'm going to go through this journey, I'm not going to go through it with ignorance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not going to go through it with blindfolds, you know, and not asking what I need to ask, because that is how religion functions, and that's how it causes damage. You know, so I'm like, there's a lot more to African spirituality than Ubungo, right? But the thing is that I didn't anticipate is that when you ask questions, answers come.
Yeah.
Right, and they come fast and hard. And sometimes you're not ready for certain answers, right? Sometimes you're not matured enough for certain answers, because some answers will change your life.
Yeah.
Some answers will derail your life, you know. So the first thing I did for myself was to let go of the fear and just say, what has to happen will happen. I'm not in a hurry. If this takes me the next 20 years, it's fine. You know what I mean? But I will do it step by step.
At your own pace.
And once that happens, then you necessarily then have to practice your quiet moments, be it upahla and whatever, in the sense that you then have to start picking up on the subtleties. Like I was saying, the communication is very subtle.
Yeah.
Go meet that person. Go talk to that person.
Yeah.
See this person. It's not about I had a dream about this. I had a dream about. Sometimes it happens, but it's very rare. I don't dream like a lot.
Yeah.
It's something. A lot of the time, it's like just a hunch.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this. Or sometimes you decide like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do this particular project, and then the things start aligning for it. If you can pay attention to it. And there is a very, very desperate need for guidance.
Yeah.
I think that's the root of the problem, is that we have a very desperate need for guidance.
Yeah.
But we don't know how to navigate that need.
Yeah.
Right. We then want to go back into the mechanisms that are familiar to us.
Yeah.
Like the church structure, We want we because that's what we grew up in. We want there to be a main leader, and for the main, and there's the trickle down. Whereas in African spirituality, is not necessarily like that. It's more community. It functions within community. So the connectedness has to be within community, not a certain group of people.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't that in a particular community, these people were this belief and those people were that belief. You know what I mean? Everyone was all, if we lived in a community, we all shared the same ideology. We all shared the same views on everything about life. Whereas now, there are many different kinds of communities. And now when you want to belong, then you necessarily have to adopt, that belief and that belief. And there are so many beliefs now. And our desperation leads us to needing something very finite and something very definite. Like, I need a name for this thing. I need a title for myself. I need a very specific mandate. I need a very specific way of doing. This is what I do, and this is what I don't do. And this is why I don't want titles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I don't want to say I'm this now, and then my whole life has to revolve around that particular thing. Now with my podcast, I'm learning to change my views on life. You know what I mean? And as it stands, I need to be able to say, in September last year I was wrong. I believed this, and this. Not even that I was wrong. I was relevant then. I don't believe it anymore. It was right for me to believe that then.
Yeah.
It's not right for me to believe it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because now I have learned other things. And so the challenge that we face is that when we want to engage on spirituality online is that we want to jump. You want to go from 0 to 100 and not pace yourself.
Yeah.
You want to go to a Gobela who's going to lay it down for you. Whereas you need baby steps. And then there's the notion of I need a solution now.
Yeah.
As in the next 2 weeks. I had this dream this morning. I need an answer by today to figure it out. You can have a dream that's figured out a year from now. You know what I mean? The very first time I went for a consultation with the healer on my own was in 2013, 2012. That very first consultation, I'm still unpacking it to this very day. That hour that I spent there, even now, I'm still trying to figure out bits and pieces of it. Most of it didn't make sense for years, and this is the thing that I if I were to advise people is don't consult so much. You know what I mean? Don't live for consultations because it's a lot of information. It's a lot. In that hour, there's a lot of information, and a lot of it you have to spend time with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to sit and unpack it, and
it
more than
takes time.
and it takes time. And some things you are too you're too much of a child, as in you're too young in your mind. You have to go through certain things first to get the maturity needed for you to open that particular chapter and say, okay, this is what I was told, and this and this and this and this. Because now, if you, it's like going to a library and you take out a book this thick, and then you go next week, you get another one this thick, and you have to keep, and then the next thing you have all of this stuff, and then you're sitting there and like, I don't know what to do. I need information. And like, it's there, but there's so much of it now, you don't even know where to start. So what you do, you check them all out, then you start again. It's like, and then you're gonna say, no, I went to this healer, she didn't help me. I went to this other healer, he didn't help me. But I hear so and so is good. That one is a good healer, or that one is a good healer. And then they go, they tell you this, they give you a thick book again. You're like, this one is not helping me anymore.
And with that issue, I've heard this so many times as well. So many people have that problem, and I think part of the problem with that is that when people go for a consultation, they're looking for a specific solution to a specific problem, and they're looking for confirmation as well. So they already know what they want to hear going into it, and they also want the solution that they want to that problem. They're not open to the idea of different kinds of solutions and things that may take longer to. It's not an immediate and instant fix for a problem. That there's a lot of, especially with spiritual problems, there's so many layers of healing and solving that problem that needs to take place. It's not just an instant thing.
For me, consulting is the last resort.
Yeah,
it's the last thing I do after I have, if I can't sit with it, with that particular problem and watch it unfold, or sort of be able to pick up on the coincidences, those patterns, those connections that lead to a solution. Only then I will go, because I know that if I go and sit down, I'm going to be told a lot of things, and a lot of it I will feel like, because you go in for one thing, you come up with another thing. They're like, oh, before we address that particular problem, there's this other thing, right? And then that will take another 6 months to try to figure out. But you're still like, no, I need to, but this thing, they're like, no, this is how it's coming, because you want it to happen in a specific way. Whereas, but you don't know that particular way is blocked. You first need to get rid of that, and to get rid of that blockage, you have to go in a different way, because they're like, no, this has happened, and then you lose your patience, or you lose your resolve to carry it. But to sort of tie it back, I think we the need to sort of form things is a thing that is sort of holding us back, in that you don't just want to belong, but you want to be given permission to belong. You want to be validated more than anything. You want someone to say, yeah, you are the kind of person, and yes, this is true. You know what I mean? Like if someone says, I've been told that I have a calling, and then they would say, people keep telling me that. And then you'd be like, so what do you think? And he's like, I don't know. People keep telling you, and you will keep not knowing. But you want to hear it from a specific person under a specific circumstance. Because now with social media, we're in the aesthetics of things. This one doesn't look like they have the right answer. This one doesn't look like he has the right answer. You know what I mean? This is happening to us when we are relatively young. We're not old people, whereby we can look beyond the physicality of things. Now we are paying attention to how people look, how people sound, the type of English they use, the kind of accent that they have, the kind of, you know what I mean? We're looking at all of those things. And those things influence this idea of belonging. Right? In that we end up wanting to belong to certain things, not because we're being directed to, but because they look like they would make us comfortable. So once you then learn to sit with yourself and sit with your spirit and unpack your own things and take time. Drop the desperation. Stop being so scared, you know. And that is perhaps possibly the hardest thing to do, in that people are like, you know, I'm scared. Like, I know you are, but a lot of it is your own making. You know what I mean? Because then there's this thing of, for example, I had this topic where I was talking about surnames, the history of surnames and all of those things, where, you know, a person would be like, I'm using the wrong surname, so I need to change my surname, you know, so that, you know, things will work out better in my life. And the reality is that there are people who are using the right surnames and they're struggling. There are people who are using the right surnames and they have chronic illnesses. They are dying. They're in poverty. They're, you know, all those things that you feel like they need to be corrected now for you to get the solution. Other people have them and they still have the same problems. You know, so it's the poverty that has us in this, or rather the poverty mentality that has us in this thing of constantly looking for solutions. Right now, we are not in a place where no quick solution is coming for us as a people, right? What we're in now, this is the long haul. This is the next 50 years, you know, nothing. And which makes it even more critical for, you know, people like you to say, you have work to do. And the work can't exist in a vacuum. You have to figure out how to make your work relevant, not just for now, but for the coming people. You know, the generations that are not yet here. You know, the how are they going to not have to do what we're doing? Because that's, for me, the main thing. Like, I don't want my kids to have to do what I'm doing. I want them to carry on from where I left off, where I can say, this is the family library. This is the library of our spirituality. You don't need to go and find a kopela and find a person and find a this. No, all of this information now you need to add on to. You know, we're adding on. Whereas we keep standing like this, like, what can I get? What can I get? And if we die as this generation, what did we add?
Yeah.
What did we add? We didn't add anything. We just added our more poverty. The next generation, they'll get even less. You know. But I'm very, very confident in our generation and the healers, in that there are obviously, you know, people who are misled in the work that they do, but I'm very, very confident that the era, this new era of healers, is going to do a lot more than what our predecessors could do. In that, because we have a lot more means, we have a lot more freedom. There's a lot more. We don't live in fear. Yeah, people don't like Isangome, whatever. It's not a thing that's going to change my life. You know what I mean? If someone doesn't believe in what I believe in, I'm not fearing for my life. I don't have to hide it and keep it a secret. Like, no, I can't. People can't know. You know, and that is a big thing. You know, the fact that we can sit here and talk about, and put it on YouTube, you know, and put it out and talk about it and whatever. It's a big thing.
Yeah.
It's a very, very, very big thing. Because then we have room to work.
Yeah.
You know. So, and there are people doing the work. I just wish that we would be less focused on, you know, hashtags, less focused on trends, less focused on now, like, you know, so-and-so doesn't like what you're doing. No, that person's thing must come down. So-and-so did this. Like, we need a longer term view. Like, don't get caught up. You must always improve. Yes, listen to people, you know, but also listen to yourself. Do the work. If no one watches it, if you get 2 views, 5 views, 10 views, it's fine. Okay, do it anyway. Someone years from now is going to come across that video that has 100 views, and something will happen. You know, and that is my approach to my work. In that, it doesn't matter who engages with it now. I need to make sure that I'm doing the very best work that I can, because just because it's not popular now does not mean that it's not relevant. Just because it's not trending now doesn't mean that it's not the right thing. You know what I mean? Or it's poor information. Because we can't control the algorithms. People are going to be popular for whatever reasons they're going to be popular. People are going to get likes for whatever, the algorithm decides that, however it is that it functions. So you can't let that dictate, unless you're trying to make a living from it, then that's the other thing, because I'm fortunate in that I can make a living without people. You know what I mean? I can make a living without a following. If I deleted my online accounts, I will still be able to make a living. It's fine. And I'm fortunate in that sense. So it gives me, I'm in a privileged position in that then I can explore fully and I can take time to develop skills. But I think because our Dala provide, I don't have to worry about, whenever I need something will be provided. I've gained that much trust, at least, that I know that I'm not scared of those kind of things. I do worry, about finance or whatever, but it's not at that desperate point where I feel like I have to do things so that they can be popular, so that I can get connections, so that I can get, so that, you know what I mean. It's a step-by-step thing, I think if I were to tell people about how to navigate this thing, take it a day at a time. Drop the fear, drop the desperation. Don't be in a rush to learn everything all at once. Accept that this will take you the rest of your life. Okay, this is not the outcome that you're looking for, might never happen. Okay, let go of that attachment to, hey, maybe one day kumele twice. Let go of that. Pretend it's going to happen in 50 years time. Okay, let go of that, but rather dedicate yourself to learning. Dedicate yourself, and with the advantage that us in the creative space have is that you can turn that learning into work. Okay, my podcast is my journey, is what's keeping me constantly learning. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't feel the need to research. I'd be like, hey, whatever I hear, I would like, I don't know. But now every time I hear something, I'm then compelled to, okay, I have to figure out what this thing is.
So you can also teach it. So you can share.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So in what you do, that becomes your vehicle through spiritual, through the path. That's the vehicle that you're using to navigate. And it's sometimes it's difficult for me it's easier to talk about this kind of way of doing things with people in the creative space and people who are not, because I can tell someone who's a fashion designer and say you can connect with spirit through the work. You know what I mean? Because there's that moment of creating where you just zone out. You know what I mean? And you're not within your body. Now things are just happening through you. Whereas I don't know how I would say to someone who's an engineer, but I want to believe that it can be pretty much the same thing. If you're truly called into what it is that you're doing, you will see God and the gods in it. You will feel whether it's accounting, whether it's whatever it is that you do, you will, if it's truly yours, you will find your path within it.
Sabingelela koko, bingelela koko, bingelela koko, bingelela koko, bingelela koko, sabingelela koko, bingelela koko, bingelela koko, wasabana koko, bingelela koko, wasabana koko, bingelela koko, wasabana koko, bingelela koko,